Join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All are present this evening with the exception of Melissa Anger. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
By Jonathan, second.
Second.
Any comments or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0. On our consent agenda, these items are considered routine in nature and will be enacted with one motion, and there is no separate discussion. Our financial reports, the check wire transfer disbursement summary, wire transfer, EFT and ACH banking activity, bank reconciliation statement for April 2019, building bond investments, Prior Lake 2018A BPM report and Prior Lake 2018B BPM report, monthly wire detail, monthly health dental wire detail, monthly check detail, and monthly ACH detail. The approval of school board minutes for the study session on May 6th, the regular meeting on May 6th, special session on May 15th, study session on May 20th, and special meeting on June 3rd. The resignations that are listed, the QComp annual report, and audited services for the district. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So made.
By Enrique, second.
Second.
By Michael. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries 6-0. Resolution of gifts. We have gifts, donations from Prior Lake Lions Club, Prior Lake Savage Optimist Club, Remax Reality, and Charities Aid Foundation America. Do I have a motion to accept the donation, or, accept the gifts?
So made.
By Stacy, second.
Second.
By Mary. That's a roll call vote. Michael?
Aye.
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 Aye. Mary?
Aye.
Enrique?
Aye.
That motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Now we'll move on to Laker Pride.
Good evening, everyone. This is always a wonderful time of our program where we get a chance to recognize and celebrate some amazing students and program and staff. And this evening, I have 3 students that I would like to invite up here, please. Tyler, Nathan, and Julio, would you come up here, please? These 3 student athletes are members, come on right up here, are members of the Southern Stars, and they have had some unbelievable success over the course of their high school career. We are so happy that you're here this evening, and we're excited to learn more about the great things that you've done. So right now, I would like to turn it over to Assistant Activities Director Beth Fuller, who's going to give us a little bit more detail about the amazing accomplishments that these students have had.
Okay, thank you for inviting us here this evening. These 3 young men are key players on the Southern Stars. Both 2 of them play on the soccer team, which competes in the fall, and all 3 of them play on the softball team, which just competed this spring as well. The Southern Stars have been a cooperative program. It's our school, Shakopee, Chanhassen, and Chaska, and we've always had some great members from the Prior Lake Savage area schools, and these 3 young men have made some awesome contributions. Their coach, Jody, is the head coach for the softball team, and Brad is the head coach for the soccer team. And basically what they do is help teach these guys through lots of practice, right? Lots of hard practices that they have to go through to compete against all the other area schools. And the soccer team has been fortunate to make it 11 times into the state tournament out of the last 14 years. And the softball program has made it 12 times out of the last 14 years. So we've got some pretty incredible play and training and excitement. I've been able to be a part of watching them for many, many years. And Tyler is often one of the key defensive players out there just making things happen, and he does a lot double plays, you name it, and running the bases like a pro. Julian is also out there. I got to see him make an incredible defensive catch in the outfield. It was almost going to the wall, which for those of you that don't know, if it goes all the way to the wall, then you get a what? It's a catch, but what if the batter? What does the batter get? Out if you catch it, but if it hits the wall, what happens if it hits over a certain spot on the wall? The double? Yeah. Automatic double? Okay. So he prevented this from happening, and these guys just know the plays so well. Nathan is also really good at soccer as well. He had 28 goals this year. Tyler was the goalie, and the two of them competed. Julian was not able to be on that team, but he did his share helping out in the softball field. So the amazing part of all these stats that we have that the coaches compiled is that, you know, they have done some wonderful things. They've made it to state. They've gotten third place recently, just a couple weeks ago in softball. And then they also earned second place a few years ago in soccer. And when I watch them, the thing that I love the most is that I see them. You notice right now they're patting each other on the shoulder and they're congratulating each other as we talk about each one of them. And that is what you see on the field as well. And it's just amazing to watch. It's a great team. They have so much faith and support in their coach and from their coaches. So it's just an awesome program. Thank you guys for all your hard work. And we're going to miss two of these guys. They're graduates now. So Nathan's got to bear the load and bring all the other players along. Thank you, guys.
Okay, we'll move on to personnel items. Jim, approval of additional staffing?
All right. Board Chair, board members, Superintendent Stallo, several personnel issues for you to consider tonight, starting with the approval of additional staffing in your board packet on page 316, both licensed and support staff. As far as the additional staffing on page 316 for licensed, there would be the Director of Assessment, Evaluation, and District Improvement, the Assistant Director of Human Resources, Early Childhood Coordinator, and School Readiness Teacher. In your packet, it explains as far as funding and some of the necessities related to that. On the following page would be additional support staff, which would include a data systems technician and an early childhood family education assistant, which consists of two partial positions.
Do I have a motion to approve the additional staffing? So made. By Mary, second.
Second.
By Stacy. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries 6-0.
The second issue would be the candidates for employment, and it's that time of year, summer for school, so it's a pretty lengthy list. It's found on page 318 of your board packet, so the district requests you to take action on the candidates for employment as they are presented.
Do I have a motion to approve the candidates for employment as presented?
So moved.
By Michael, second.
Second.
By Stacy. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0.
And we have one introduction of a new employee.
Good evening, Chair Schimick, members of the board, Dr. Stallo. You just took action on our new Director of Assessment Evaluation and District Improvement. We're pleased to be able to welcome to the district Ms. Chrislyn Goodman. She was selected from a very deep pool of candidates, variety of stakeholder interviews, and we can't be happier to have her on board the Prior Lake Savage Area School team. Board members that are, I think, newer to the seat as board members, when we do hire administrators, we do oftentimes have them come and at least give a few words about themselves, talk a little bit at the board meeting. And so tonight, Chris Lynn asked about that opportunity, and I said, absolutely. So I'm going to turn it over to her to share just a few words.
I just want to say I'm really excited and honored to be a part of Prior Lake Savage, especially at this moment as you're growing and changing. And I'm really excited to put my talents and experience to use here. I've previously been in Minneapolis Public Schools as our MTSS coordinator. Currently the Research Evaluation Assessment Coordinator in North St. Paul Public Schools, and then also have some language immersion background, as well as in the elementary and middle schools. So nice to meet you all.
Thank you. Welcome.
Next is, excuse me, is the approval of leaves of absence. We have 8 of them, so we are requesting to have these approved as presented.
Do I have a motion to approve the leaves of absence as presented?
So made.
By Mary, second.
Second.
By Enrique. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0.
The next would be the approval of district retirements. We have 3 retirements on the agenda tonight, and we are requesting that you approve the following with many years of service between the 3 of them.
Do I have a motion to approve the district retirements?
So made.
By Mary, second.
Second.
By Jonathan. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0.
And finally, the last one is a new job description for a data systems technician. As we grow and are more dependent on technology and software, there's increased need to support that. So we have a data systems technician that we are requesting that you approve the new job description.
Do I have a motion to approve the new job description for the data systems technician?
So made.
By Enrique, second.
Second.
By Michael. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries 6-0. Thank you. On to unfinished business, facilities planning and construction. Jim?
Good evening, Chair Schimick, School Board, Dr. Stallo. I have 2 action items tonight for the school board to consider. We have 2 bids we would like to ask approval for Hamilton Ridge, bid pack 17. Work scope 8 for RTL construction in the amount of $1,513,969. And work scope 9 to MCI Company or Incorporated in the amount of $357,900. We're seeking approval of those 2 bids.
Do I have a motion to approve the bids for bid pack 17 as described?
So made.
By Stacy, second by Mary. Any comments or questions?
Are we gonna take, sorry, I just was reading the note here, as far as the decline on bid?
That would be the next action item.
Okay, sorry.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. We would also like to decline work scope 18 elevator from Otis Elevator Company. The submitted bid did not comply with the specs that were outlined in the, for the bid. So we'd like to reject that and quote that project differently. We did talk about that at Facilities Committee meeting. Also, we would like to also reject from bid pack 17, work scope 26 asphalt paving and work scope 27 landscaping and fencing, and work scope 25 for earthwork and site utilities. The change, the reason we would like to the reason we are recommending to change those or to decline those is the changes to the civil plan based on changes from City of Savage.
Do I have a motion to approve the rejection of bids in bid pack 17?
So made.
By Mary, second.
Second.
By Stacy. Any comments or questions?
I just- Question, just on the elevator one, there's not a lot of people that do elevators, is there? I mean, as far as.
No, there's not a lot.
I was gonna say, Otis is usually the one.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4.
Okay, all right.
And we had spec'd a track elevator, which kind of sits on the wall and it runs up and down on a track. The bids came in with a hydraulic elevator, so a little different.
Okay.
So we're gonna rework that bid. And so the second piece of the action is I'd like to ask the board permission to rebid work scope 25, 26, and 27. I'm requesting advertisement per bid.
And not 18, we don't have to do that for 18.
That'd be a quote. It's the amount is small enough where we can quote that project,
Oh, okay.
not bid it.
Okay. So you're asking for a re-advertise on
To
25?
advertise rejected bids 25, 26, and 27.
Okay, and this is just because of the reworking of the road that we need to have more?
Correct. Changes to the site plan.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions? Mary?
I just want to say that we did talk about this at the facilities meeting, and there was an explanation about the hydraulic, and then the rebidding due to Savage. So this was discussed at the facilities and long-range planning meeting, so it's exactly as we discussed.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0.
I think we have to do another motion, though. You want another motion to?
Do we need two motions
Well,
for
he
this?
said,
Decline.
I don't-
One
we
to
rejected.
accept.
This was the one to
Right.
reject.
Correct.
Now you want us to rebid, re-advertise, right?
That's been our policy in the past, yes, is
Okay.
to get board permission to re-advertise.
So
We just need to.
this motion was to reject the bids, and now you need a motion to rebid the bids,
Correct. Or permission to advertise, yes.
advertise. Okay. Do I have a motion to advertise
So
the
moved.
bids? By Jonathan, second.
Second.
By Michael. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to district elementary attendance boundaries. Dr. Stallo, you wanted to say something first?
Yep, I think we've got a slide that's coming up. Good evening, board members and community members. I want to thank you all for your engagement throughout this entire process. We had a lot of people who were engaged in the input team, on the design team. Board members, I want to thank you for your time, not just during the meetings, but also reading emails, meeting with community members, meeting with our team throughout this entire process. You certainly have not taken this decision lightly. I want to thank you parents who've been a part of this process and engaged from the very beginning. I hope that regardless of the vote this evening, that you feel heard through the process, and we really appreciate your engagement. And you know, as I've said before, good news is we're a growing district and we had community support to build some additional learning space. Good news is everybody loves their schools. Good news is we have amazing schools in every corner of this district. And as we open Hamilton Ridge, there is a need to change those attendance boundaries. So board members, this evening, I'm seeking approval on one of the three recommended elementary attendance boundary options that are under consideration, B1, C1, and C4. Thank you.
Okay, and before I ask for a motion, I have a few comments, and then I would like to encourage each board member to speak to the recommendations. I guess I just want to say, boundary changes are inevitable in a growing school district. This board approved committees of administrators and community members, the process, and a guiding change document to be used to do the work and present options to the school board to take action. Since the boundary options that were presented in March, board members have studied those options, asked many questions, had numerous conversations, received and read close to over 200 emails, added an option after community comment, publicly listened to the community on several occasions, and did some of our own research as well. I'm confident that all board members have done their due diligence, all the while respecting the parameters of the open meeting law. We are now asked to make a decision on the school boundaries that we believe is in the best long-term interest of all of our students. With that, I'm asking for board comment before we make any kind of a motion. And to start, maybe on this side. Mary, would you like to begin? Or Enrique? Go ahead.
Well, first of all, personally, I appreciated the passion showed by everybody in this district. I think that is evident of how strongly people feel about being in this district. I feel like it is something that really shows that the fact that the parents are advocating for their kids, and there's nothing more personal than your kids. And then those that also advocated for other neighborhoods, it says a lot. And I prefer passion to apathy, that's for sure, but most importantly to complacence. Because it's when we get complacent that things really go awry. So, you know, it's personal. Your kids are personal. Everything that was said here was heard. Nothing that was said was in vain, regardless of the Democratic vote that's about ready to happen. And personally, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about personal experiences. I learned about how passionate you were, how much you loved one school over another, the teachers that you loved, the nature programs that you loved, and that, regardless of the outcome of this vote, informs our decisions going forward, and that's really, really important, okay? The second thing I want to kind of talk about is, as a board, and personally for myself, I can't, and I won't speak for everybody, but our job is governance and oversight, and our job is to look at the district as a whole. So if we were to go one direction or another, and that required us to spend more money, that's not money that comes out of one elementary school. It's not money that comes out of, you know, one subdivision or one neighborhood. It's something that affects the entire school district, okay? That's money that comes out of money that could be going to kids, to additional staff, to resources, athletic programs, well, maybe not that anymore with, but, you know, it is money. We've got to take that seriously. So if we make a decision that requires us to spend more money in the long run and potential change, that is something that we need to take into consideration. It's something that I personally take very, very seriously. Hindsight's always 20/20. We didn't expect Red Tail Ridge to grow as fast as it did, and it did. I was here, I've been in the district for almost 20 years, and I remember the new building of the high school. I remember that 2 years after it was built, there was a large discussion because we were already out of locker space. So strategic decisions are very, very important. We don't just look now, we look to the future. And every one of you that has kids aren't looking just now, they're looking from K through 12th grade. So you don't want to make a decision in 6th grade or in 9th grade or in 12th grade that says, gee, woulda, shoulda, coulda. We have to take those into consideration. And as far as the choices go, I'm not happy with the choices that we have before us. I wish we could do a combination of two of them, there's no doubt. But we are a democratic body, and every one of us has one vote. And what we individually contribute should be an individual vote. It should be something that we did research, which I did research, and I wasn't kidding when I said I followed the buses around. I drove the neighborhoods, I looked at the numbers, I looked at the original demographic report, and I even talked to some realtors. So with that in mind, that's how I made my decision, looking at the whole district, looking at everything, and trying to gauge how it would affect us, not just in the next couple years, and also putting in my own personal experience, because I do drive that 169 trip. I do drive around the district a lot, going to various meetings and to meeting with people, and I know how difficult it is to get around. We don't have a neat district. This is a bizarre district, okay? We've got nooks and crannies all over the place, and quite frankly, our transportation department is a sheer miracle they can do what they do within the cost that they do it in, and to be able to get to the far reaches of every single piece of this district. So when they say no matter what is chosen, I know that they will make it work. Our concern and our governance and oversight is to question how, is to question the net impact, and to represent the community appropriately, but also the long-term financial issues that our district may go through, or even going through this process again, which is unreasonable. It's costly, it's emotional, it shouldn't have to happen, and if it does have to happen, then we want to mitigate the impact of having it happen again. So that's how I made my decision. And again, I want to emphasize, not one of these is perfect, okay? It's not going to be perfect, but we're doing our best.
I echo a lot of what Mary said, not as a cop-out. I did a lot of research, also drove the routes, spoke with a lot of parents, and looked at a lot of the data. We were only presented with about 5 years' worth of data here. But like a lot of you, I'm looking at this from the perspective of where is my child going to go, not just now, not just next year, for their entire academic career. I'm one of those that moved many times, different countries, different elementary schools. Heck, my parents sometimes would move just for the sake of moving because we didn't want to get out of practice. I wish that were a joke, but that's the reality of it. So I understand all the emotions that go into making this decision, or all of the emotions that come with reaching out and supporting and advocating for your child, advocating for the school, advocating for your environmental research, and everything that makes your neighborhood school yours. And I take that same passion with the decision-making process, looking at not just these 5 years, but what is it going to be like, trying to figure out what our district will evolve into over the next 10 to 12 years as each one of these kids comes in from pre-K all the way through graduation. Some of the things I looked at are utilization. I'm an operations person, and I know that anything above 80 to 85%, you're just taxing the space, you're taxing the resources, you are taxing the people who are doing the work in those specific spaces. Looking at it today, looking at it in 5 years, projecting 10 to 12 years, trying to figure out where's that sweet spot. Like Mary, there's no one perfect solution of these three. But these are the three that we have before us. And there's one in particular that sticks out for me as being a best fit for right now. Not ideal, but best fit for right now. Projecting out for 5 years, looking at the growth potential that we have in the next 5 years. Again, not ideal, but it gets us closer to that 80 to 85% utilization across the full gamut of our elementary schools. And then as we look at those potential future developments, if any of them are, if we're blessed enough to have all of them hit, which one would cause the least amount of disruption as we have to go through this process and engage community to do yet another boundary change? And for me, that one is C1.
First of all, I would like to thank everybody as well. I'd like to thank the admin team for your patience with all of the questions and multiple trips into the office to visit. I'd like to thank my fellow board members for being willing to discuss openly, to disagree openly, and to make sure all voices are heard. And I'd like to thank our community members too. We would have voted quite a while ago if it hadn't been for the passion and commitment of our community members. So I want to thank them for everything they brought forward. I agree that there's no one plan that will leave everybody completely satisfied. And I will make a confession that in addition to all the research I did for our particular boundaries, I started researching how other districts in Minnesota and beyond Minnesota did their boundary changes. I have yet to find a single district where everybody was happy with the final drawing. I don't think there's a way to do that. Some people have brought forth modified plans, and every time we move a line just a little this way or a little that way, there are other families who are impacted. So there is no perfect solution. When it comes to voting tonight, I know I will disagree with some of you on the plan that I select, and for those who may vote for the same plan, I may have different reasons for voting for that. As I said at the last work session, I'm a product of the Red Tail Ridge experience. My kids were there when the school opened, and I have had a family member in that school every single year, and will have a nephew there for 2 more years. I have seen how a rapid population growth impacted that school. I watched the art room disappear, the music room disappear, the teacher's lounge disappear, the media center shrunk, and they used closets for some of their teaching facilities. There are some who would argue that's acceptable if everyone's getting along okay. It is not acceptable to me as someone who's experienced that year after year. So that's one thing that weighed heavily in how I'm deciding to vote tonight. I'm also looking very carefully at capacity projections, and that's influencing my vote. I want to feel really comfortable, as Enrique said, about how the capacity affects not only the facility, but the people who have to work there and the people who have to learn there. I can sit here tonight and honestly say I have made multiple trips into the school district's main office to talk to our admin team. I've met with Julie over financial things, Jeff and Terry, met with Jim about transportation and facilities, met with Christy. I know many of you have. So in addition to my own research and poring over charts, I've gone in and every time numbers shifted or we got more input from the community, I went back in and asked the questions that people raised. Read every email, like I know all of you did, had coffee with people, took phone calls at home. So I listened to parents for my input, and then I also made individual efforts to reach out to members of the input team and to the design team so that I tried to cover all my bases. This is a really, really hard thing to do. I want a perfect solution. I want to be a people pleaser and make everyone happy. I just can't find an example of anywhere where boundary changes can come out to be perfect. I know we talked a little bit about the possibility of a school being built within 5 years that could impact capacity. I'm just not comfortable weighing that in a decision that I have to make for the next 5 years. The fact that it's an unknown if we would add a school, the fact that we would be able to place it where it would be ideal for us without having a property already in place, and the thought that it might be built and accommodating students within the 5 years we're trying to address is not something I'm comfortable weighing tonight. And so I'm going to do the vote based on the information we have now and do the best job I can. Last Friday, I had 2 unique experiences that helped kind of ground me after all of this. It's not just emotional for families. I found this emotional as a board member. I found this very emotional. But Friday morning at the end of year celebration with the teachers, the event closed with some of our youngest students singing in the choir a special song that, well, 2 songs that they prepared for their teachers, for their educators. So I'm looking into the faces of some of our youngest students. They're not only singing, they're doing sign language, and I could see the connection there. And then that evening we had graduation, my first Prior Lake High School graduation. And as we walked in, and I was a little nervous about passing out diplomas, Chair Shimmick said to me, "Tonight will be a great night." She said, "You will shake hands with about 100 kids who come through, many of them who spent all of their educational years here in our district from the beginning. Those are the people I have to vote for tonight. I have to consider all of our students across the district, and that's what's leading me to my final vote tonight, and I thank you all for getting us to this point."
Jonathan?
Thanks to all my fellow board members for your diligent and sincere efforts. I will be, I'll be voting for C4 tonight, and I'd like to share kind of the thought process that got me there. From the outset for me, this was to be a pragmatic, common sense comes up a lot, sensible solution that for me is grounded in doing what's right for students and making good use of our facilities, making good use of the resources that we have as a district. And the most important set of numbers for me personally, when I think about it that way, is at the end, what are the capacity usages in the buildings? Not in the first year, not in the second year, but at the other end. When we had 2 options brought before us, and the only 2 options were B1 and C1, my first instinct was to support B1 and to know that we were going to make a lot of people really unhappy. And it was simply because when I look at those numbers, when I look at that last year, those are the most balanced use of our building's numbers. There was feedback from the community, all of you who came out and spoke. It mattered, it's important, we are glad that you became a part of this process. It mattered enough that there's a different option that got brought to us, some of whom that makes things better, for some it does not. It is, as everybody has said, no matter what option any of us is voting for tonight, it's not ideal. They're not perfect. In a perfect world, the family that would have sold us property to place a school at a bargain rate would not have been where it is. It would have been on the west side of the lake. We are a fiscally conservative district. We are careful with our dollars. And when we had an opportunity to purchase land at a drastic discount to market rate, guess what? We did. We jumped on it. And that was before most of us were on this board. C4, to me, is, to some degree, a compromise. And as others have said, we did the drives. It's so challenging when something that is so heartfelt and meaningful to one family is going to be equally heartfelt and meaningful in a bad way to another family if we vote a different way. We cannot do it in a way that is ideal. So when I look at the options presented to me, when I analyze those numbers, I see the best use of our resources as a district being C4. So that's how I will vote. Last thing I would like to just add on is I learned some things in this process, and I learned a lot from all of you. So I want to kind of have a mea culpa, a little bit of an apology. The first time we spoke as a board, even though it was coming from the right place, I talked about how my kids moved around and moved buildings and that it worked out. And I was trying to reassure people, but I know that from your seats, all it sounded like was a condescending lecture. I'm sorry. It was the wrong way to do it. We've had back and forths that have been at times heated and at all times passionate, but I believe in my heart that every one of you and every one of us took every action and said everything that we said with motivation that was pure, motivation that was for the benefit, for the best thing for our kids, for your kids, for our kids as a district. So I want to thank all of you who came. I want to thank all of you who got together with me individually. I met with people who are going to be happy with with my vote. I met with people who are not going to be happy with my vote. I don't know what's going to happen tonight when it's done. What I can tell you is, for me, if C1 is the choice, if B1 is the choice and not my C4, I will walk out of this room in support of the decision that this board has made. And I will walk out of this room feeling confident that we did the right thing for students, because that's what's in our heart. And I'm also confident that when somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 30% of our elementary students go to a new building in the fall of 2020, because it's a big number, that our principals and our teachers are going to roll out the red carpet for kids who are moving to a new school and do everything they can to make them feel welcome and to make them feel appreciated and to make those families feel welcome. And I hope that as a community that we can rally behind kids and know that that's what's the most important thing.
JC?
I think, as I've stated, this is my 9th year on the board, and this is my toughest vote. I do want to thank everyone for being part of the process. And tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit about process and just in each of the plans and give you my thoughts on them. Because I know, given some feedback, people wanted to hear more detail on why we're voting what way individually. I think as far as the process was put together by stakeholders from all over the district to come and create and analyze options that were going to meet the needs of us as a district when we opened our new elementary school in fall of 2020. Individual stakeholders representing all our schools discussed, analyzed, and changed many different plans along the way to come up with the options that we have here tonight. In speaking with many input members and design team members, I asked if they felt that their voice was heard and the options presented were representative of the group. And in the people that I spoke to, they did feel that. I know the process was not perfect, but it did bring us solutions that met the guiding change document and allowed for significant community engagement in the process. the most I've ever seen in the 9 years that I've been on the board. And I just want to thank everyone involved for taking time away from their families and helping us come up with a solution that works for the entire district. When we originally were presented with the two options of B1 and C1, B1 in my mind, looking at the capacity utilization at the end of the 4 years of the plans, Jeffers was at 81%, but had half of the far west potential growth, that big area to the far west, where we know that there's going to be a large amount of students coming from in the future. And Westwood was at 91% with a smaller potential of that 42 and 21 area, which most likely is not, it's not as big and will probably have some type of mixed usage in it, so not as many single-family homes. The challenge with that plan, obviously was pointed out by lots of people, was that there were homes that were literally a few hundred steps from the school that they were going to be sent to another elementary. So not ideal. C1 for me was less desirable just based on the fact that it left Westwood at 98% after 4 years, and there still were large developments left in it for its future growth. I also felt that the diagonal cross across the district was not an ideal travel pattern, knowing that not any of the plans had the best interests with travel. I'd like trying to keep the families west of the lake, as I've kind of stated before. And I'm not going to echo what Jonathan said, but I basically said, you know, our schools aren't put in the greatest spots ever. We have a building at Greenwood that's been there for 60 years. These buildings, you know, our district is known for being fiscally conservative, and we use our buildings. And they've been all different kinds of things, between Twin Oaks being a middle school, elementary school, a high school. So we use our schools, and they have been, over the course of time, put in places that, if you look now, looks like we're crazy. But at the time, it was a decision that was made with what was best. So at that point, when we had the two plans, and given the community feedback that we had from the plans, and a desire to listen to that feedback and have that process work, I asked if there was a compromise. I know a number of other board members asked if there was a compromise. There were people publicly that asked for, from the public that asked if there was a compromise. And that's when C4 came forward as the next option, which I believe is the compromise of the plans. And Westwood numbers were much more favorable in that one. And C4 takes into consideration the Carriage Hill proximity being right next to the school, which is the spot that we got the most feedback from. So that's the reason why I'm supporting C4 tonight. I think with any major change of school boundaries, there's going to be families that seem like they've lost something. And I know if you are one of these families, I do want you to know that I've read every email, I've driven the roads, I've asked for accountability on the numbers, and I've had many discussions with the administrators over the last 11 weeks. And what I am confident in is that because of you and your involvement, you made this process better. You have asked the questions and made us take our time to make sure we do this once and we get it right. So I thank you for taking the time to engage and advocate for your children in our district. I would say the one thing that has been consistent with all of our emails that we have received from families, no matter which one it is, we've received emails from Five Oaks, Jeffers, Glendale, Westwood, and Red Tail families, all expressing support for their current school. I'm confident as families transition, they will again love their new school, no matter which one it is, because we have great teachers and administrators that have the best interests of our students in mind. And we as a community, we support our kids. It's been that way since I've been here for almost 20 years. We value our public education, and just as we have in the past, I know now that we will move forward as a whole community and do what's best for our kids.
Thanks. Couple more comments, I guess, from me. I reviewed and studied and dreamt or had nightmares about all three options that are presented before us. I spent time looking at the other two options, and in those other two options, they don't address travel around the lake, or the capacity is too high in one school or another. I've looked at the capacities of the schools for the long term to avoid overcrowding, to minimize future changes. I've looked at areas of development, both current and future, and I've looked at the options to minimize travel across the lake from west to east, and the reality that we really only have one school on the west side of the lake, and it alone cannot accommodate all of the future growth in that area. As I stated previously and has been stated tonight, our schools are not placed evenly throughout the district. Oh, I wish they were. That would make this a whole lot easier. School boundary changes are among the most difficult decisions to make and the most difficult for families to deal with. I have confidence that we all will deal with them, and I have confidence that our administration and staff will provide the smoothest transition possible for our kids. I know there's already some plans in the works to make sure that the kids are feeling comfortable and welcome in a new school, because one whole school will be moving, and they'll be moving to a lot of different schools. So that's pretty impactful in our district. I also agree with many of the people here that none of the options are perfect solutions, and I honestly don't think there is a really perfect one. But based on what I believe is in the best interest of all the students in our district, I'll be supporting C4. It's our best option, and it's a compromise for travel, which is what we heard from our community. It minimizes the travel around the lake, and it helps with the capacity numbers across the district. I want to thank everyone for their involvement. It's great to see the passion of all the parents and see involved parents. I've been involved in other things over my years, and sometimes parents just don't show up, don't care. So it's refreshing to see everyone here. I wish that I could make everyone happy. Obviously, I can't. This is a hard one, and there's been a lot of discussion by all board members, and a lot of thought has gone into this. At this time, I would like to ask for a motion to move forward.
I'll make a motion to accept C4 as the recommended boundary change process.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Jonathan? Any other discussion or comments? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Nay?
Nay.
Nay.
That motion passes 4-2. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to new business. Strategic Direction 1 with Jeff, Kevin, Dan, and Ann. Are all four of you going to be here?
Good evening again, Chair Schimick, members of the board, Dr. Stallo. The next two items on the board agenda are pretty closely connected. We're talking about our first strategic direction. We're going to start with educational equity and excellence work, an update of our PDSA. And with me tonight, Dr. Schuttinger is presenting, as well as Dr. Edwards and Ann Grainer, who are taking part of this presentation to give you an update about our work with educational equity and excellence. To give a brief overview, we're going to talk about the priority goal area strategic direction alignment. And earlier this year, we had connections, and I know Kevin will reference this, had presentations at work sessions and board meetings around instructional excellence and personalized learning. And really to kind of foreshadow where we're moving as a recommendation is we're going to start to streamline these things. The things that we're working with educational excellence, equity, personalized learning, meeting students where they're at. That is where we're headed as a district, is bringing those together, really wrapped around the whole child. We are going to spend some time talking about Reimagine Minnesota. We've had a variety of engagement. I know Dr. Stallo, you've been engaged in that process with other superintendents. We've had district staff participating in some of the sessions around Reimagine Minnesota, and looking at our work with a critical lens relative to how does our work connect with Reimagine Minnesota. And I think I'll take a minute here to talk a little bit about Full Circle. We started our work on educational excellence and equity about 3 years ago. We started with really looking at what were other districts doing. Some districts we found were working on it. We're working on equity for 10 years, 15 years. Some districts were, anywhere from 3 to 8 years, somewhere in that process. And all of them took a different path. Some of them had similar paths along the way. A lot of them had similar bumps, hiccups, and some trials and tribulations. And the importance or the purpose of our work is really how do we learn from other districts? And then how do we as a district craft and design the direction for Prior Lake Savage area schools? What fits for Prior Lake Savage area schools? And the component that always is the hallmark of this work is how do we bring people together to talk about equity, talk about excellence in respectful manners through having mutual dialogue, disagreement, and ultimately, how do we move forward as a district to be more inclusive, to engage more students, engage more families? Because as a district, we are changing. We are changing, and a one-size-fits-all isn't working for everyone. How do we continue to engage kids through social means, academic means, behavioral means? Because kids are changing. And I'm foreshadowing a little bit on the second presentation with MTSS. There's a lot of things that we've learned through the things that we're doing with our PDSAs. And so that's why things are starting to come together into a very cohesive picture. And so we'll talk about Reimagine Minnesota because much like we learned about other districts and where they were at, and then we went into really the past 2 years of professional learning. We've been working with Cherokee Holly. We've had cohorts, which I know Dr. Edwards will be speaking about. We've had staff engaged in the process. We've had trainings for all district staff, support staff a couple years ago, and we've had cohorts launch out of that where we've had a lot of good dialogue. We've had a lot of participants at all levels, high school, middle school, elementary, around engaging students, around connecting with kids, helping them to where they're at and taking them even further and getting them more connected to school. And so we've gone from learning, we've gone from understanding what other districts have been doing, looking at process, we've gone now from professional development, and we're almost through full circle, and that's where I think Reimagine Minnesota is important to look at, because again, after we've spent a couple years learning, we're starting to go back out and to see what other districts are doing. And other districts are engaged in Reimagine Minnesota. And we're finding a lot of connectivity, and we're finding a lot of connections with this work, which we're going to provide an overview for you tonight, and also share with you some of the things that we're doing in the district that are aligned to this work and should serve as a foundation moving forward. And that is part of our recommendations, is to continue to have deep study and deep connection with Reimagine Minnesota, as well as other districts that are out there, to continue to find out what fits for Prior Lake Savage area schools and what fits the needs of our stakeholders. And then we'll have our recommendations, which I've already foreshadowed a couple, so maybe I'll just skip to the end, right? So I'll talk a little bit about our priority goal area. The district's E12 Educational Equity and Excellence Plan to close achievement gaps will continue to focus on the implementation of culturally responsive teaching strategies and learning environments, family engagement strategies, and professional development strategies. And the team has identified three strategic directions that this work closely aligns to. Increasing measurable student growth and achievement, expanding innovative programming to meet family needs, engaging parents, families, and communities to strengthen a culture of respect and inclusion. And one of the first things that we'll notice is that as a board, you really reauthorized the strategic directions earlier this year through the strategic planning process. As we took a quick look at this, the new strategic directions that are in bold fit within our educational equity and excellence plan. So we're finding a lot of connectivity. We're finding a lot of cohesiveness in how to bring the strategic directions together. And number two, the fiscal accountability and the integration of eSTEM focus across the district. By the end of the presentation, we'll make a pretty compelling case that educational equity and excellence is inclusive of all of our strategic directions, which is another reason, again, bringing things together. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to talk about the next couple slides, and then we'll go to Ann, and then, or actually back to me, then the rest.
Good evening, Chair Shimmick, board members, Dr. Stallo. This is a graphic that you've seen before in our personalized learning presentation from a couple months ago. And really, it provides the impetus and the why behind the instructional excellence framework that we've developed. It's to pull together and provide coherence for many different initiatives that teachers can often see as disconnected or revolving around themselves. So eSTEM, our assessment, grading, and reporting work, our work with CLR, our project-based learning, literacy, all of these things combine into the learning experience we want for kids. And that, as you've seen in previous presentations, is really coalesced into the Laker Learning Compass and the framework that accompanies it, which really provides us the direction for teaching and learning that we plan to follow for the next many years. So really revolving around those 3 tenets of personalized, purposeful, and empowered. That's the learning experience we want to bring to life for all of our students in the district. Is this back to you, Jeff? Yes. Okay.
So within Reimagine Minnesota, there are really 3 foundational pieces: see all, serve all, and support all. And again, it's that commitment to creating lasting equity and excellence in education for all students. It's a nice natural segue from our work on personalized learning as we work, again, working with all diverse stakeholders, providing that personalized, relevant educational opportunities for students, and then resources to align to student needs. So when you boil it down and you start getting a little bit more into the details of Reimagine Minnesota, there are 9 key strategies. And there are a couple areas, they're broken out in this first area, teaching and teachers, and several strategies associated with that. So I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Edwards to take us through the next couple of slides, and then we'll come back and pick up at the midpoint.
Good evening, Chair Shimmick and members of the board. Obviously, we have a number, when we talk about teachers and teaching, that's where it all boils down to, right, in the classroom. And that's been the focus of our work with our CLR cadres thus far. So we have in your presentation, you see at each level, we have a summary of the slides, but you'll see a lot of similarities across our system, high school, middle school, and elementary. We focused the past school year, not this past school year, but the 17-18 school year with CLR Cadre 1, that we had each school identify members of our teaching staff that were wanting to participate. I think that was a key in that first group of teachers, to get the training. And so we took that forward with each of our teachers, and we had teams that we began that work in November of 2017 and continued throughout the 2017-18 school year. Then we kicked off this fall identifying some of our schools got in on the fall and implemented once again a CLR Cadre 2 group of teachers. But to supplement that this year also at each of our sites, we identified lead teachers. And I think those were people who were in that first group of teachers who received the training and were really passionate and really doing some great things in their classroom, connecting, increasing student engagement, connecting with all students. And I think at each of our sites, we all as principals collectively feel that that was a very valuable group of people to identify early in the school year to help lead that work for CLR Cadre 2 and move us forward throughout this current school year, the one that we just wrapped up, the 18-19 school year. And each of those members of the CLR lead teacher would come forward and work with the administrative team together and the teaching and learning team, the peer coaches at each building, each site level, and identify those strategies that we wanted to see providing an opportunity for other teachers to experience and gain an understanding of. And as we did that, I think I'll just give a personal experience with at Twin Oaks Middle School, speaking to the role of those people, really were helpful in bringing forward and having already identified, which I think most principals will be able to say this, already identified our CLR 3, our next group of teachers that are identified now, ready to kick off the year next year. And that's something that I think shows a great level of commitment on the part of our teaching staff and certainly our building administrative staff to expand the exposure to these CLR practices, getting all of our teachers engaged in this work. So going back to that further slide, to help individualize and help all students be seen, be heard, and be recognized. And throughout the work that we've done thus far, I'm confident that as we continue that work this year into the upcoming school year, we will be we had a meeting mid-year. I think many of you worked with Shiraki Holly mid-year this year as well. We as an administrative team did, and identifying where we need to be a year from now in terms of the number of teachers who are engaged in this work and taking this work to that next level. And I feel confident that we as a collective group of school leaders, of site leaders, and other teaching and learning folks are ready for that. So you just kind of take you through each of the ones, because at each of the levels We had very similar experiences in implementing our cadres and very successful experiences with that. So I think I'm turning it over to Ms. Granger.
So the next strategies with Reimagine Minnesota really fall under that student and family support. And I'm just going to take a moment to highlight one strategy from each level rather than go through them all. So at the high school level, we were really excited this spring to implement some student voice within caring conversations at the high school. May 16th it was, we had 60 kids and 15 staff participate in a caring conversation in our building. Prior to May 16th, we had actually taken about 14 students, our CLR leads, and some admin to Jordan and watched them have a caring conversations with some Shakopee students and our students as well. And we came back from that, and there was so much excitement around that from the students that we said, we got to do this. We got to do it in the high school. So a caring conversation is just a student-led conversation designed to build community through sharing personal experience to increase real and authentic student voice and around things happening both inside and outside of our school, and to, more importantly, help build those relationships. So on May 16th, we did that at the high school. The plan is to continue that next year, once a month with students. So it was a really positive thing and fits really well into that strategy E around student voice and sharing their experiences with teachers and with staff. So we hope to continue that next year. At the middle school, I want to highlight strategy F. They worked the eliminating adult behaviors and policies that lead to disproportionality and providing growth-oriented student, staff, and family support. I know they've worked very closely at the middle school level with their staff to track that reduction in the math, track reduction in the math pathways, and they continue to implement that. They're in year 2. Also, implementation of more co-taught instruction where SPED staff are pushing into core classes and working with gen ed teachers, teaching alongside gen ed teachers to accommodate for all students and teach to all students, and that's happening at the high school level as well. And also moving forward with the second year of their WIN time, also known as Laker time at the high school, but just providing that extra support and enrichment and extension during the day, during the school day, and opportunities for all students there. And finally, I'd like to highlight strategy G at the elementary level, building those bridges between school and community, something we are striving to do at all times. But they hosted a parent PTC member and gathered input on school celebration conversation. And from that collaboration came out themes around celebrating student work, E-STEM, school spirit, and different cultures and seasons.
Strategies H and I really apply to system funding and leadership and broader statewide advocacy. So strategy H is really about building and sustaining a shared understanding of equity and high level of skill application for leaders at all levels. Some of the things you've heard already are some leadership development work we've done with board members, community members, our leadership team, with Dr. Holly, and in our weekly and bi-weekly teaching and learning admin meetings, that we've really helped to build the capacity of our leaders to identify our underserved in our system and to take specific action steps to rectify that situation. Strategy I is really where the human resource aspect comes in and identifying statewide funding that ensures equity, access, and opportunity for all students. You heard a bit about that at the recent legislative session. And strategy H is some of the work, you've heard about some of that work. Strategy I will continue to work and develop that next year. The other thing we're going to continue to do is build on that cohort of resource teachers, continue to work with Dr. Holly, and continue to develop that cohort of resource teachers so that they are sustainable and so that they can really develop, bring that leadership to a broader group of teachers. I will just increase a bit about that. The other area you'll hear a bit more about too is really increasing our pool of teachers of color, and that's another area in the recent legislative session that didn't get a whole lot of funding, but I know Jim, our HR department, and our administrators are committed to increasing our pool of teachers of color in the district, and also working to establish more teachers who have a diverse array of backgrounds and diverse experiences in their backgrounds to better appeal to and engage all of our students and all of our stakeholders and best represent our community. this back to you for strategic direction.
Thank you. Yep. So as we look at the strategic direction alignment again, and these are the new strategic directions as of July 2nd, our work is going to be again around personalized learning and Reimagine Minnesota and making very deliberate connections with these strategic directions in our work moving forward. So our recommendations that we have, these are going to be ongoing. It is going to be multi-year. This is going to take a little while to implement these things and then also ensure that there's fidelity to them and systematize them too. I mean, we really have a lot of pockets of excellence happening. We've got a lot of great things that are happening at the high school, the middle school, the elementary, but the next part is then replicating them system-wide and continuing to build the system so that we have consistent experiences for students, for staff, and for stakeholders. And so we're recommending streamlining educational equity with personalized learning to build intentional connections with student learning and achievement. Intentionally align and embed the educational excellence and equity in the district's personalized learning framework and reimagine Minnesota goals and strategies, particularly intentionally elevating student voice and choice in teaching, learning, and assessment, and then family, community engagement strategies. And again, ongoing professional learning. Continue to reinforce the why, the mindset, the importance of this work. We still have staff members who are asking for when's the next cohort starting, and looking at another round of Foundation 1 and 2. We have staff members who are early adopters and are looking at 3 and 4. And so we've got some sites that are poised to start moving ahead, which is great, and it's exciting to see. Provide that professional learning and coaching for teaching and learning staff. The site equity leads that you heard about, administrators on leading educational equity. And then finally is to offer formal professional learning or provide the opportunity of professional learning to you as a school board. I know many of you have joined our sessions, have attended some of the work and some of the sessions of the cohort, or as you've done those walkthroughs with Dr. Stallo, you've seen some of those things happening in the schools. And I think that's, as part of our recommendation, we want to offer that to you as a board so that you as well can continue to ask questions, engage in the learning that staff are engaging in as we continue to move forward. So with that discussion.
Any questions? Mary?
Well, I'll start off by saying 3 years ago, we had a equity gap and closing the gap discussion where we brought in an outside surveyor. And one of the things that stood out to me a lot was the comment from the surveyor that we had a systemic issue. And we talked about that, and I asked, systemic issues cannot be solved internally. By nature of the definition of the word, you need to bring it outside. And what you alluded to at that point, what we ended up with that summer was the first meeting with Shiraki Holly, Dr. Holly. And we had an amazing group of community members, teachers. I believe it was Jordan School District that was in there also. And I've been involved in a little bit of that since then, and I certainly hear the updates in the curriculum meeting, which have been very helpful. But you just mentioned bringing Dr. Holly back in. Are we going to do something like that again to kind of re-engage everybody after all the work that's been done?
Correct. Yes, there's, it's been 2 years since we had those formal sessions with Dr. Holly at Fall Workshop. And we've hired a variety of new staff that are waiting to hear that Foundation 1 and 2. And so we do have plans for him to come back, continue to work with administrators and provide that Foundation 1 and 2. Continue to support our leads and continue to lead this work as we start to embed these things intentionally within our school district, and then looking at fidelity. The Foundation 3 and 4 does get into instructional strategies and instructional vocab for kids. So there's a deeper level that we as a district, it's great that we provide that foundational professional that professional learning for staff, but now it's into the application and then fidelity to the strategies that we really have to focus on.
Well, one of the things that Dr. Holly talked about quite a bit, and we saw it in that room, and I'm not sure if we kept that up, was the integration of the community, families, not just the students, not just the educator, but a combination of people kind of all sitting at the same table and hearing the same thing. So we're all understanding what's going into the administrative process as well as the student learning. And sometimes when it only goes down only to the classrooms and only to the teachers, the integration with the community, which is really a huge influencer in this area, gets lost. So
Agreed.
how are we going to get that community back into it?
Number one is intentionally, and that's as we look at our focus of the student voice and family engagement strategies, as you saw here, that we have to be more intentional with those. We have to be, we focused on the classroom from the teaching standpoint of changing that experience for kids. But now, again, we need to do an intentional look at how do we continue to engage families and community in more authentic ways.
Okay.
So that is going to be our ongoing and continued work.
So I have one last question, because I know I tend to hog the time with questions, and I'm always full with questions. But how are we going to measure this? I'm a numbers person, as you all know, and this is it's soft. It's very hard to measure. But how do you know if we're improving? And I prefer not to go with self-surveys that I know we've done before. But how are we going to go back, like the original survey that happened 3.5 years ago?
So one of the things that we've started talking about with Dr. Holly is we have quite a, I don't think we have a critical mass of teachers yet, but we do have teachers who've participated in the cohorts, several rounds of coaching from our peer coaches, our equity leads, and external coaches, as well as with Dr. Holly. One of the things we've talked about looking at next year is what does the student experience look like in classrooms of teachers who've been trained by Dr. Holly versus classrooms where teachers have not been trained? And how do we continue to have professional dialogue around that and continue to provide professional learning and looking at the achievement data of students?
So are we bringing in an external person like we did so many years ago to actually come in and do another assessment? Because that original assessment was done by another external company, I believe, or something like that, to kind of give us a little bit more of a unbiased perspective.
So you're referencing our next presentation.
Okay, sorry, didn't mean to
Yep.
jump.
Can I fill in another? Yeah, thank you. I think the huge measurement, one of the huge measurements is, are we closing achievement gaps?
Yeah.
Are we increasing student achievement for all students? Are we increasing student engagement in some of this walkthrough protocol? I think it's fantastic and ironic that Chrislyn is with us this evening, because we have known, or I have known since I got into the district, that that's an area we need some support in, is really looking at somebody who can constantly be feeding us and pushing us some data and looking at really those best practices, what's making a difference and what's not. So as we continue to work on our school continuous improvement plans and our district scorecard, ultimately what we want is gaps closing. More kids taking the most rigorous coursework that we have. So some of those measures that will certainly, attendance, all of those things, suspensions and student discipline. And again, I know I'm getting into your next presentation, but
Okay.
but I love that these two presentations tonight, with the presentation that you heard most recently on personalized learning, Jeff's exactly right. Our role and our goal is, how do we merge this work so that teachers really understand, families understand, kids understand the connectedness of it all.
Stacy?
I just wanted, and I apologize if you said this and I missed it, but, because it's a lot of information. When we're talking about the cadres, the different cadre 1, cadre 2, how much of our teaching staff or administrative staff is taking part? I mean, is this optional? Or are we telling everyone it's optional, right? I mean, people are doing this during their
Correct.
PD time?
So this is happening during the school day where they're participating, and then afterwards. I think last year we had, I think we're upwards of about 220 staff who participated in Cadre 1 and Cadre 2.
Okay.
Across the elementary and secondary level. And that's, we've, at one point, we had all of our staff 2 years ago go through the foundational 1 and 2 trainings with Dr. Holly. Of course, we've hired some new folks since then. As a growing district, we have quite a few folks that have not had that foundational training. So that's part of our plan too, is to go back and catch those people as well, and those that want to hear the foundational training again. We have people that have gone through the cohort saying, boy, that was great, we love it, can we do it again? It's like, it's that, I guess, that thirst for professional learning and how to get better, and I think that's a testament to how successful it's been is number one, the number of teachers who've selected to participate in the cadres, and to our administrators who continue to support teachers and encourage teachers to engage in this work, that the experience that when they go in there, our teachers are having a positive experience. They're learning new things, they're applying it with students, and they're seeing a change in the classroom practices, and they're seeing a change in how the kids are responding to the instruction.
One other thing to mention with that too, our peer coach team has really taken this on into and internalized it into their work. As Jeff mentioned, we want to make this a systematic part of everything we do. So they have incorporated equity-focused questions into the pre and post reflective conversations that they have with teachers during their high cycle and low cycle observations. So it's becoming just a part of our practices across the board. We incorporate it into curriculum review. We look at our equity and achievement gaps in ELA, for example, when we're doing curriculum review in social studies. What are our systems producing, and how do we intentionally focus our resources and pedagogy to lessen those gaps?
I mean, my point was just, I mean, and I know we can't require everyone to do it, but I mean, the work is so important and it's so embedded with everything that we're doing, you know, the more and more people that can take this, I think the farther we'll get along the pathway. I know, but nothing speaks like someone having a positive experience and saying, hey, you really gotta try this kind of thing. But, that's why I just was trying to get an idea of how much staff has really taken it.
Our work with Dr. Holly has us targeting at least 60% of our staff participating in the cohorts.
Okay, 60%.
And again, that's
okay.
that critical mass. And then continuing to offer, again, by having that 60%, you're building that internal expertise.
Right.
And then you have staff that are working as PLCs and staff that are working on curriculum review and all of those systems that are embedded within our district in order to start shifting resources, shifting the approach for students, and then continuing to offer professional learning experiences for staff who continue to need them, and also to encourage others who are a little late to the party, so to speak, in getting those professional learning opportunities.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions?
This might be a little tough on the spot for you, so I apologize, I didn't think of it ahead of time. But you were mentioning in the presentation, one of the objectives being to have increasing the proportion of staff that is people of color, teachers of color, looking like, where are we with those ratios, staff versus our students? Do we have any idea? Are we even close?
No, we're not close.
We're not close. And there are very few schools in the state of Minnesota that are.
I mean, it's challenging.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. It does, and with that said, it doesn't mean that we're not gonna try.
Yep.
And not gonna continue to seek out people that have a diverse background or diverse experiences to bring to the district in order to connect with staff and kids in ways that we haven't connected with them before. So, I think as you pointed out, Dr. Stallo, every district is looking for hiring diverse, and people with backgrounds, and it's tough. And right now we're, as you get a little deeper in that, we're having a shortage in some content areas of being able to find qualified teachers, let alone the diverse backgrounds. And so, then I know, Jim, you could speak more to this, but then you start getting into tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 licensing, as far as, people that have that community expert license or background, or having comparable experience where they may not be traditional educators, but they come in with that content knowledge or that industry base or that background base, which again, we work with staff on the instructional side. And so, but they bring the expertise in to the district. And so there's not one single strategy, I think, that makes us more diverse in our hiring practices, but it's a commitment to continue to explore the opportunities we have as a district, and also to continue to be at the job fair, looking for diverse candidates, continuing to highlight the success of our district, and staff wanting to come to Prior Lake Savage area schools and stay in Prior Lake Savage area schools.
I think that's one of the areas too, as Jeff spoke to before, the 9 Reimagine Minnesota strategies. We've had multiple this year networking sessions where maybe 3 districts will take a strategy and share with the rest of us what some of their best practices are. So we've heard great examples of Grow Your Own program. So both with some students of color as well as some support staff of color who have said, hey, we want to merge into being certified staff, and how can school districts support that? So I mean, that's been a really great thing, is to learn from other districts and then again say what will work here and what do we need to keep doing.
I want to make
Great question.
one more comment on record, because this has been a huge concern for me ever since this program started, and the combination of programs under the umbrella. What concerns me is there's a lot of misinformation in the community about what's going on. And I'm one that says, okay, let's go find out the facts, right? And then I make decisions based on the facts. So I purposely went to some of these. I went to the opening one so I could experience it firsthand. And the misinformation is very misleading. And furthermore, the gap areas aren't just about people of color. It's about, you know, free and reduced lunch. It's about other kids that are kind of left in the middle. It helps everybody. And there is really nothing about any of the programs that I personally experienced and sat through that even came close to some of the things that I've heard in the community. And that's why I want to emphasize that I think it's really important that we do engage the community more in this so they can also experience it firsthand.
Fair point.
Anyone else? Move on to your next presentation. Thank you.
So segueing to our next priority work is our work in multi-tiered system of supports, MTSS, a program evaluation for Prior Lake Savage area schools. Again, this is under our strategic direction 1, increasing measurable student growth and achievement. Our goal area this year was a comprehensive look at our K-12 multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS. It's another acronym, but MTSS is a little easier to say. Framework for academic and social emotional learning to be documented and implemented to provide a continuum of support for all students. And again, all students meaning looking at the continuum. Students that are on the lower side of the continuum, students that are on the higher side, and also students that are in the middle. Differentiation, another level of support, whether it be enrichment or intervention, or also more intensive support, really looking at that full continuum. And as this group came together, I think it was, you know, understandably so, as a district and our schools do a lot of things. We do a lot of strategies, we have a lot of techniques, we have resources. We have staff that have varying levels of expertise. We have programs for students, we have things that we've been trying, best practice, looking at what other districts are doing. But ultimately, our question is it effective? Are we achieving or experiencing the results that we should be achieving? And I think as this group starting to say, you know, we really need to take stock in the work around what are we currently doing to support students across the MTSS framework? What do we currently have in place? How long has it been in place? Have we been doing it because it's traditionally been in place? Are we doing it because we've had some really engaged staff members who are really quite fantastic at implementing different strategies and seeing great results for kids, but it's not something that's replicable across the district? So where we really landed was looking at, we need to do really an internal evaluation audit, a look at really what is the student experience in the school district relative to MTSS. And so we reached out to the Center for Applied Research and Educational Improvement, known as CARE, again, another acronym, working with Dr. Kim Gibbons. Kim is quite a regional authority, if not national authority, in her work. She used to be a special education or student support services director up at the St. Croix River Educational District. And then several of her associates worked with her on this research, including Amber Patnode. And so that was our research team. The evaluation really started in earnest in the fall, and went over the course of several months, inclusive of surveys, several surveys of administrators, staff, they had focus groups at all of the different levels, really looking on these questions. To what extent are all buildings in the district implementing an aligned pre-K-12 MTSS framework? To what extent do teachers support implementation of the framework? What is the relationship between the implementation of the MTSS framework, student achievement, and behavioral outcomes? And then the last two are more specific on special education. What's the impact of the framework on special education child count? And then how do the academic outcomes of students receiving special education services in the district differ by federal instructional setting? And so again, getting to that external look at what is the experience of our students across the board relative to these questions. And so again, the review process had interviews looking at implementation, what's happening in the district, what's the experience that's happening, surveys around beliefs, perceptions, RTI implementation, and then practices associated with a high performance survey, and then data that we have existing in the district, special education child count, student achievement data, district MTSS guidance, and then discipline attendance data. And so looking at all of those, and the results came to the district approximately a month ago. And so again, very thorough, but given the timing, as a district administrative team, we spent one day, I think it was early May, correct, Dr. Stalo, just going through the results. And at that point, we need more time to go through the results a little deeper before we start to roll out the results looking into next year, and then looking at what the recommendations are for the district. And so as a board, you're getting a very high level first look at some of these results. And again, looking at how we're going to be moving forward as a district as a result of this. So I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to talk a little bit about the next few slides.
Some of the strengths highlighted in the results were that we have highly consistent universal screening procedures. We use multiple sources of data to aid in decision-making, E12. We have weekly progress monitoring for reading. There's a consistency in educational experience across teachers and schools at the elementary level. And interventions supplement rather than supplant universal instruction, so students aren't being pulled from core instruction for interventions. Some findings were that all buildings in the district reported some implementation of the MTSS framework, with the exception of early childhood. We do have needs related to infrastructure and fidelity of implementation, of which Chrislyn Goodman will be a tremendous benefit for us. Not to put too much on it. Hi. We did found that the highest level of implementation was in the areas of assessments, including our entire system of assessment in the district and database decision-making, and that implementation efforts in math are lagging behind those of reading. We focused very heavily on reading and literacy for the past many years, and our efforts with math have not quite kept up. So that was an area that was brought up in the findings. The recommendations including preschool students in the framework so that we provide a clear continuum from early childhood to our K-5 programming and beyond. To streamline resources, to really look at all of our initiatives, as Jeff mentioned and Dr. Stalo mentioned, to help teachers see coherence and connectedness between initiatives, between standards-based grading and assessment grading and reporting and personalized learning and literacy work and MTSS, to help them see how these all fit together. And really making it happen through this framework. So MTSS really relies on these 5 key pillars: assessments, database decision-making, multi-level instruction, infrastructure and support, and fidelity and evaluation. Some of the findings, the recommendations you'll see here. So our screening systems, they recommended that we expand them a bit to include more grade levels and conduct them all 3 times a year. So we will conduct an investigation with our teachers and our administrators to see where that careful balance of more assessments without sacrificing instructional time so that the assessments are used and can be used to aid instruction. To progress monitor in the area of math to catch issues that may be emerging or gaps that may be emerging in students' math understanding early so we can intervene. And then one of the big areas of work we know we have in front of us is social emotional learning, and conducting some screening tools to collect some data on social emotional learning, and also it's going to be a part of our work just to conduct an audit on where are all of our social emotional learning supports and how do they best support students. In database decision-making, we did have some recommendations around selection criteria, specifically to use, expand some of those selection criteria to include math, SEL, and really standardize those pre-K to 12, and then using local norms to determine students who may need interventions in math or reading. In multi-level instruction, we're working on this today, actually, and I've been in conversations with many of you about this. They did point out that we have a gap in phonics instruction and phonics learning in our youngest students, K2, and that's something we're working directly on right now. We've been piloting 2 phonics programs this last year. We're planning to expand that and deepen that next year. So they pointed out something that we know, and we were glad to get that triangulated and some recommendation and expertise from them. And also to identify a common differentiation framework, and that really dovetails with our work with personalized learning and the Laker Learning Compass to really define what does great Tier 1 core learning look like in Prior Lake Savage Area schools, and then help all of our teachers implement that across the district in every classroom. Some of the recommendations for tiers 2 and 3 were that we need to develop better interventions for math and behavior. Like I said, our interventions for reading and literacy are pretty well developed, but math and behavior lagging a little bit. We need some stronger interventions with reading, math, and SEL at all grade levels, specifically secondary. And problem-solving teams could benefit from a more standardized and more effective approach to really analyzing student challenges and really recommending research-based interventions. And some of the recommendations for infrastructure and support that we're already starting on is really working to convey to staff that MTSS is all of us. MTSS involves all teachers and staff in the district, and it really is a part of everything we do from Tier 1 to Tiers 2 and 3 on both sides of the diamond. To help all teachers really recognize their role in providing both academic support and also social and emotional learning support. So professional learning around that is obviously a priority for next year and the beginnings of that as well for many years. These are all multi-year plans waiting to emerge in the next few months here. And then for buildings, really looking at their master schedule. How do we best align our resource of time to meet the needs of students in ELA and math and SEL and all of our content areas? In terms of fidelity and evaluation, this, as Dr. Stalo mentioned, is an area of need in the district. So we hope to, for MTSS and for all things, develop better systems to evaluate and monitor our current practices so that we can intervene systematically on practices and procedures if they're not getting the results we want early on. And to develop the procedures to really monitor and analyze some of those, and to really formalize that process of reviewing student data to speed and quicken the interventions that we can make on a building and district level. Okay, so in summary, so I will say the MTSS team, Dr. Gibbons called us the dream team and said we have the essential elements and leadership here. We've identified the needs. What's next is really the work, is really identifying the work at the district and building level and getting to it. Developing action plans, building both individual and collective efficacy for our principals, for our building instructional leadership teams to help them better lead this and see themselves as leaders in this work. And what remains is some of that work is the vision and the resolve to do it, and to do it over many years and not let it come and go, but to be something that drives our work for 3, 4, 5 years. And again, Prior Lake Savage Area Schools is poised to achieve better results, was one of their key findings. So our immediate next steps, some of them are beginning at our administrative retreat tomorrow with a little bit of a deeper dive for our administrators into the MTSS results. We're working with Carrie to prioritize the recommendations for our team, develop a district leadership team around MTSS, develop that district plan this summer, and then start to develop building plans in August. We have the Carrie staff coming back in August, late August, to work with our building teams around bringing this to the building and then to the individual teacher level. questions or discussion?
Can I add one thing? I just want to add one thing to help you all make a connection as well, because I think this is part of what's going to be really important for us to do with our staff. We've been working on professional learning teams, our professional learning communities, our learning teams for years. And really, the diamond, I just want to be really clear on that because it's a really important part of this. The diamond that Kevin was talking about. So the 4 questions of our learning teams. What is it we want all kids to know and be able to do? So that's our core instruction, right? Question number 2, how do we know if they know it? That's that whole assessment piece and all the multi-layers of assessments that we need to have for different purposes, the screeners, the summative, the formative, like all of that assessment literacy that we need to make sure that our staff have. Question number 3 is what happens when they don't know? And that's when, as you think about the diamond, you think about those students who haven't yet reached those learning targets. And the 4th question of our learning teams and PLCs is, what about the kids who already know it? And that's where we make sure that we have enrichments for our students. That's where we make sure that we've got, rigorous courses. We are starting to see some teachers do some self-paced or competency-based work. So I just wanted to connect those things because the learning team structure we have, and this will be an opportunity for us really to help support our teachers in making sure that we're using that data as Kevin was talking about. Thanks.
Are there any questions?
Question, and this is something I failed to ask during the curriculum meeting when we went over some of this. When you're doing this at the K through 5 level, are programs like Lalo Del Lago and SAGE included in this?
Absolutely.
And they're adjusted accordingly for the, okay. And then we also talked a lot, and Dr. Stallo referred to it earlier as far as the rigor based upon the level of the student. And we also had some issues and questions around the assessments and the rigor juxtaposed against getting that good grade. And that was a cultural thing, and I know that hits harder in middle school and high school. How does that play into this?
We want students and parents and every stakeholder to be really consciously aware of their students' achievement and learning at all times, to help the student learn about and know about his or her own strengths and weaknesses and help to address them. So that is the goal of assessment on a basic level, to help people know where they're at and to help them really plan their next steps and their goals. So that rigor is something we're really working on intentionally as we bring teams through curriculum review, as we work with individual teams and teachers to develop and refine their assessments. We're using the depth of knowledge framework to really help teachers kind of systematically look at assessment questions or assessment items and say, is this something that's just, kind of scraping the surface? Or is this something that's really asking students to analyze and really go deeper with their knowledge and their application? So that's a slow process. I can't say that it's anything but that is something we're doing systematically, especially in secondary.
And I think the other thing that falls into that question is our AGR work. I mean, that's what standards-based grading is. It's saying we're changing the purpose of grading and what grading has always been. So instead of adding up a bunch of points that students may have gotten from extra credit, or they may have gotten from, actually knowing the outcomes on a test, that's what standards-based grading is about really ensuring learning based on the standards. And we may not learn it all at the same time, but the goal is the learning. So I think that's the paradigm change for parents as well as kids, is really saying, okay, how are we ensuring that our grades reflect learning and not some of these other things that sometimes traditionally have gotten in the way?
Well, as someone who actually sits on a couple of colleges and reviews admissions, I'd rather see a B student who took AP classes than an A student who never challenged themselves. And that's something that has to trickle down through all the grades to understand the criticality of that challenge, the rigor, and training themselves to learn how to learn, not going for the grade. It's the grades that really hurt more than anything else at that point.
And that's a fundamental part of what we strive to do with the personalized learning framework too, is really empower students to be learners. That's the best gift we can give students is to be learners once they leave us.
Anyone else have any questions? I just want to make a comment that I've made for many years, that I'm glad that you're doing something like this that addresses all students, not just the ones on either end of the line, the spectrum, whatever. because the kids in the middle need to learn how to learn too. And over the years, sometimes they get missed because they're doing okay. So I'm glad to hear that this will address all kids at all levels. So it's exciting to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to,
Thank you.
thank you, certifying the 719 census. Is that Leanne?
Good evening. I am here tonight in your packets on page 417 and 418. You will find the resolution to certify the district census. And I wondered if you had any questions. I'm here seeking board approval.
First, I'll take a motion to approve the 719 census.
So made.
By Stacy, second.
Second.
By Mary. Are there any questions?
I did not. It was the state demographer's estimate. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, this is an easy one for you. I have a motion and a second, and that's a roll call vote. So Enrique?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Aye. Stacy?
Aye.
Jonathan? Aye. That motion passes 6-0. Thanks, Leanne.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to the Southwest Metro Intermediate School District Long-Term Facility Maintenance Program Budget.
All right, similar to last year, in the recent years, our intermediate districts have had the opportunity to also do some of their ongoing work through long-term facility maintenance. As member districts, we then pay our portion of that based on the use that we have of the programs. So tonight, I'm here seeking approval of the long-term facility maintenance resolution that you have in front of you.
Do I have a motion to accept the resolution as it's been presented?
So made.
By Mary, second.
Second.
By Enrique. Any questions, comments? All those in favor? Oops, this is a roll call too, sorry. Michael?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
Stacy? Aye.
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
And that motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now on to Prior Lake Activities Fee Increase. Beth Fuller.
Good evening again to Madam Chair and the board and Dr. Salo. I am here representing the Activities Office, and Russ Reitz presented the information to the board on the June 3rd study session. So he just asked me to go over it a little bit. So this is the same information that was shared with you on June 3rd. The main reasons that we're requesting the increase is that we haven't raised the fees in the last 3 years. Back in 2015-16, it was raised by $10 across the board. And it feels like the best way to maintain our fully funded programming is to have small increases across every 3 to 4 years as needed. And right now, the cost for providing our programs is increasing. And that's what the second slide shows. Everything from the Schedule C, which is the coaching stipends, which we're trying to align more with our area schools and our conference schools. The Metro officials are now negotiating and proposing fee increases over the next 5 years, which are $2, $0, $3, $0, and then $2. And you can see the amounts that would create, and those again would be cumulative amounts. Transportation fees are increasing by 2%, and those are through the general fund, but again, that's an additional money cost for our program. And invitation fees to go to tournaments, things like that, always increase over the years as well. We have summarized the total costs for 2019-20 and then all the way down through 2021 through 22. Those are cumulative, and if our math is right, it's approximately $35,000 if you add all of that up over the 3 years. So our proposal is to raise participation fees by $15 across the board for the upcoming school year. That would lead to a revenue increase of approximately $27,000. We would also raise the family limit, which is currently a max of $850 per family, to $900. And then this has been an idea that we've had in the works or on the table, thinking about how to do it, and have a student activity admission pass for athletics only. Students would pay $40. Free and reduced lunch students would still remain free. That was put into place in the 15-16 school year. And students would pay $5 if they didn't want to get that fee, if they only went to a few events per year. But overall, if you look at the other information, most students attend quite a bit of games throughout the year, and so it would still be a cost saving if they went to over 5 events, 10 events at the max. And then we show that there's over 100 events that happen, home events, during the regular season. So it just shows you how much is out there and what they could be going to. So we feel like it would be a good deal for those that go to a lot of events. And then some who just choose to go to individual events would pay the $5. And that's grades 6 through 12 for that. There's a comparison that shows how all the other schools in the South Suburban Conference, where their fees are, and while our fees are a little bit on the higher side, they're right around the average in many cases, and other programs are being cut in some of their districts, and some of the transportation is not being provided in terms of there and back for away games. And so we want to keep fully funding ours and keep ours heading in the right direction. Attendance at home events, you can see the asterisk on the 2015-16. That's when we opened it up for all students to attend every home game except for football and boys hockey. And you can see that it increased some gate in terms of those years. And then basically it's kind of leveled out, although we've seen some switches between basketball and hockey this year. And you know, there's a lot of different factors that could be why, but sometimes it depends how well the season is going for some of those sports, and you get a little bit of hoopla, you know, going, and then everybody wants to attend. So we're asking for board action on this proposal to raise activity fees for $15 across the board.
For clarification, so your proposal also stated the $40 fee, which is new. So you're asking for both in your proposal?
Correct.
Okay.
Do we need to say that twice? Two proposals?
Pardon?
Can we vote on those separately?
Well, that's what I'm trying to clarify, because your proposal is saying all together, but in our packet, it's talking just about the activity fee.
Okay.
And this was just presented very quickly at our last work session. So before we take a motion, I guess I'd like to open it up for some discussion to see how people are feeling about basically the two areas.
Sure.
So the $40 per student fee, and then the activity increase, because for me, they're two different things.
Yep. Yep.
So if anyone, Mary, did you want to start, or somebody else? Anyone have a thought?
Well, first of all, I agree with you, Lee, that this was brought up very quickly at the June 3rd meeting. We had some questions. I know I submitted a couple directly, and because of everything else that was on our agenda, I didn't follow up either. But I feel comfortable voting on one of them, but not on both tonight, just because I would need a little bit more information. And even the one with the $40 fee, one of the key questions that I think wasn't just asked by me, by other members of the board, is how did you come up with that number? Would this be an either or? I know that was a huge question. Is this mutually exclusive, one or the other? Because it seemed like the $40 may give us the money we need without raising activities fees again. And then also what would happen if, because Russ had, I believe, made a statement, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he said, I'm not sure if that would give us the revenue we needed or not. But he was basing it on what he saw at other schools. And so we kind of said, you know, what happens if we raised it to 45 instead of 40, you know, and made it for all activities? Would that help and not have us do both? And there was a lot of, questions, or, you know, just a lot of data.
Sure.
A lot of open-ended stuff. I personally don't mind voting on the although I do wonder why it's still at 40. I know that we kind of talked about, you know, how he got to the number, but I think that would be something good. I'm not prepared to vote on, or I don't feel comfortable, by the way, voting on the raise in activity fees, because we are a little bit higher. I have heard from lots of parents over the years how expensive it is. And for parents that have multiple kids in multiple sports, you know, it does get up there, and so I have a few more questions about it. I'm not doubting the revenue need, the increase in the prices, but I have a few more questions to make sure we're doing this right, and we're not going to inhibit somebody from being a part of a sport that they really want to be because they can't afford it. And I also want to note that I made this point at the study session, but the fee itself is only one piece. I mean, there's other equipment, there's things like that that the parents are also responsible for. So I take that more holistically than just individually.
Anyone else have any comments? Jonathan?
Well, to those points, it was my understanding that these were kind of two completely separate things. The way I understood how Russ was explaining the season pass, if you will, revenue versus gate revenue, is I think he wasn't sure it might be a wash. My impression was it was more of a different method than a revenue generator.
Correct.
And kind of looking at trying to potentially increase attendance and just get more kids to come to stuff. And, you know, I think I think from a money standpoint, they were different items altogether. That was how I understood it. Your comment that the activity fees are just one piece of the cost of an activity is accurate, right? I mean, having just gone through it, I mean, you as a parent, it's just, you just keep writing the checks. So it feels. And so I'm sensitive to that. I do, you know, when I look at where we stand relative to the rest of the conference and the other schools, that has an effect that when you're the most recent district to have had an increase that you do every 3 or 4 or 5 years, that you leapfrog a couple of schools, and then while you're sitting stationary for 2 years, there are 2 or 3 schools that raise theirs and leapfrog you, and it just, you wind up everybody. So, I mean, we're still within, it appears to me, within 5% in general of the average, pretty much across the board.
And we actually called Shakopee because we weren't sure those numbers are accurate, and they are accurate, and we're not sure how that is happening, but it's happening. But we did call.
Now you got us all scurrying back to look at Shakopee.
Yeah.
Michael, did you have something?
I think you said your math was it 32 or 35,000 we were looking at for additional expenses. So I do have a concern for that coming out of the general fund. If those expenses are going up, how are we meeting those? I do see the $40 as an optional separate issue that buys kids the option. Hopefully they will look to buying those and say, hey, I've got my pass, so I'll go to 10 more events this year. I'd love to see that, but I don't see that as addressing the shortfall in our budget. I am sensitive to fees. However, it has been a few years. We are close to the average, and I know that it can be a hard thing for people to accept or ask for help. I know we do the free and reduced lunch for people's sliding fee scales. Is that right? If somebody qualifies for free and reduced lunch, they get a discount or free on their activities. So I realize that that's sensitive. But with that $15 change, I feel comfortable that we have to make sure we're not just always eating out of the general fund either, so.
And I will add that with VPay, the free and reduced lunch happens automatically. Like, no one has to approve it or
anonymous.
anything. It's automatic as long as they check that I would like the free and reduced criteria to also apply to activities fees. And once they do that, it happens automatically. And then even still, many times we will help individually. If someone reaches out and said they need help with a fee, we will help them.
I was going to ask, like, if a family's going through a
We'll find
cancer
a way.
treatment or something,
Yep.
would they be able to ask you for help?
And that
Okay.
happens regularly at the start of every season.
Sure.
For sure.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any comments? Stacy, do you?
Yeah, I think, I had a couple concerns about the $40, just from the sense that I know when I was on the board and we were wanting to increase participation, and I've been in the stands on some of those times, you know, when there's like 6 kids. And I really felt like it wasn't necessarily it didn't do anything obviously to football, but I do think that it increased participation at levels on other sports that weren't seen as the prime sports, I guess, for the word to be used. So my only concern with the $40 is it gonna deter, some people from doing that? I don't know. I guess, it's an experiment. I wouldn't want to see some of these sports that have lower numbers to see their numbers go down. I mean, that would be a concern for me for that. I do kind of see that as a separate. As far as the $15, I do think it kind of came up quick, and I would have liked to have, more discussion on it. My concern, I know the fees here, our fees are a little high in comparison, but I know that taking $27,000 out of the general fund is affecting all students, whereas $15 is actually being assessed to the people that are actually using it. Which I have, if you're actually participating, playing the sport, you should be the one that kind of plays for participating. So I was a little on the fence about that, to be honest. I guess, I don't know if it's something that do we have to, like tonight, would there be time to vote on something in later June if we need to? What, as a timing standpoint, I guess.
Julie, can you
I would
address
look
the
to
budget
Julie.
Yeah.
issue?
I made an assumption in the budget that this would happen, but definitely if we could still approve the budget, it would just then be reverted to the general fund. So I had to make a decision.
We
So
don't
when
need
I-
to make
for
the
my
decision
presentation,
tonight, and you can go forward with the budget.
we can still go forward with the budget. It's not going to matter for the budget itself. That money would just come out of the general fund. And when we revise the budget in December, we can make those adjustments as well. So I guess that, if that answers your question.
So from your perspective, if it's next meeting, that's fine. Does it make any impact at this time of year for you guys as you're preparing for next year?
For fall sports, when are these due?
We're gonna open that registration like the second week of July, so pretty much right away after the 4th of July, we would open, and so we would need to be able to post what those are for sure, for families.
Well, we could
If,
then.
yeah,
Can we
board,
open?
if board members.
Before the word,
Yep.
I just think we
after
need
the
a
work session?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think we just need a little more time to have a couple more.
And if
I mean,
there's
yeah.
questions, I know I have not received any questions from board members about this. I don't know if Russ has, but I have not. So if there are specific questions, we'd want to be sure to get those to Russ so that we could get that information to you as part of your consideration.
What's our schedule? Do we have our next study session and then the board meeting? Will we have time to discuss this? I know that we talked about.
We could discuss it at the work session and then
Okay.
have it,
Open it.
open the
That would
meeting.
be- That would be good.
I wanted to hear from Enrique, and then I had a couple quick things I wanted to say.
Yeah, and I apologize for not sending my question in advance. It just kind of popped to me now.
Okay.
So you mentioned that the last time that the fees were increased was 2015, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
15, 16.
2015, 2016. Is there any data that shows what the participation rate was? How did the rate increase impact participation? I guess that's more of the question, in the immediate year and years that followed.
I guess I would say I don't have that right here to look at, but I would also say that I know, having been a part of this department since then, our numbers just keep growing in terms of the number of people trying out for most of the programs. It's, activities, it brings people in, and there are many programs that don't have cuts, and so they are able to help all students have an experience in the activities, whereas there are some that are, a baseball program can only have so many players, a basketball program can only have so many players based on court time and that kind of thing. So I would say there are some that it's gone up, and I have not noticed any of them going down, to be honest.
Right.
I think it's important that the that the fees, how do I say this? Actually, Stacy, you said it better than I did. To pay the $15 for a student to play the sport seems more appropriate to me than having it affect all of the students in the district. So I completely agree with you on that. I really don't want it to affect our general fund any more than it has to. I question, I think I've asked this before, if there's such a thing as a family pass or a family fee when somebody comes to a game, gets kids used to going to games. And I'm not sure that that's ever gotten anywhere, but be curious about that. And the $40 activity pass, I could be okay with, because I think a lot of times kids will maybe want to go to a game, but they don't want to stay for the whole game, so they don't want to pay $5. But if they have a pass, they might come for part of it, rather than not at all. But what I'm generally hearing from this group is that we would like to have more time to discuss it. If we have more questions, to get them, to Terry, to Russ. And we still would be able to meet your deadline by discussing it at the work session at the end of June, because we can open up that meeting for a board meeting, and there may be other things. Sometimes it seems like there always is. So I guess, I think that's the general feeling of the board right now, that we would like to consider it longer.
For sure. Okay.
And I'm betting you'd like to have had Russ here tonight.
I would love to have him here, absolutely.
I would ask, and I know I wrote down a couple of those questions, but any questions that the board has, please do send them to Russ and me, so that we can be sure that we have them, collect them, answer them, and are prepared for putting it back on the agenda on the 24th. And then we'll also put on the agenda, in case the board is ready to take action, we'll open up the meeting on the 24th as well.
Okay.
I think we've had some other issues preoccupying our mind space.
Thanks,
For
Beth.
sure. Thank you very much.
Okay, the GASB 84 resolution. That's you, Julie.
I'm really not sure if I should sit here for this one, because I have it in front of me here. This is a resolution that requires the school board to bring student activities under board control, per the new legislation. The Minnesota legislature made this change, as well as in following the guidance of the Governmental Accounting Standard Board, to bring all of our student activities under board control. So that's all this resolution does, is allow that to happen starting July 1.
Okay, do I have a motion to accept the resolution regarding board control of extracurricular activities, as
So
Julie
made.
described? By Mary. Second?
Second.
By Enrique. Any questions or comments?
Just to reiterate.
Go ahead, Stacy.
So currently, where are these funds housed right now? In their general fund?
They are not in our general fund. They are in a separate fund. And we have a separate bank account for them as well.
That we don't see or are under control of, is that?
They're not under board control at this time. That is
Okay.
correct.
Whose control are they under?
Individually under the districts. They still follow a lot of our rules, but
say.
it's a little bit looser because it's a student activity. So we try to allow them to do some things through student activity. So the rules aren't quite the same as they are for the general fund. However, now they'll be required to follow exactly the same rules, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult for them to do some of the things they used to do, unfortunately. And it's not by being under board control, it's just that now they have to follow the same exact rules. And so it does put a little more pressure on them to follow those requirements.
And I know we talked about this at the board session, but what's being done to educate those groups about what they're going to be?
So for starters, we're starting tomorrow with all administrators at our meeting tomorrow. But we also are planning to do, part of our issue is we don't have all of the compliance yet of exactly what needs to happen. So we're kind of waiting on a lot of that to really get a really good grasp on it. We'll be able to speak to our administrators, but coming up here probably this fall before school starts, we'll be having some trainings with all of our advisors for our student activities, and going through all of this with them, just so they understand the changes in the law and the rulings.
Just to reiterate, so meaning we don't have all the compliance, meaning we haven't heard all the answers from the state as to exactly. It's not like we don't have it, right?
But
right.
we haven't heard all the answers from the state, the Department of Ed. They're still trying to go through this. This was done through the legislature. It's, July 1. We have some items, but they're still trying to go through what's the correct way to do some things, especially with scholarships and different activities and how we used to do them, and now how can we still do those things? And what are the rulings to trying to make some of those things happen?
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I think I have a motion and a second, and that's roll call. So Michael?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
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 Mary?
Aye.
That passes 6-0. Julie has the preliminary budget approval.
So I'll come up here for this part of it. So tonight, after many months of working through our preliminary budget, this will be our final for tonight, June 10th. We started this process in February of this year, and so we just want to go through a little bit. This is just kind of the culmination of everything we've talked about these past several months. So just kind of starting again, like we do, everything that we try to do with our budget is guided by our strategic directions and those items that we view as priorities in this district. Our enrollment projections, and you can see our pupil units and our ADM, we're trying to decide, we have 8,988 pupil units. At the 7th through 12th grade, it's a weighted WADM of 1.2, so we're at 9,853. With another 172 students at early childhood special education with 68 weighted average daily membership. Our revenue parameters, and we've gone through this, and I'm not sure how tired you are of hearing this or if it's just informational for you, but again, the legislature approved a 2% increase on our general formula. So we're showing that 2% to $126 per pupil unit. And so that brings us, along with the 252 additional students we're projecting, to a total increase of $3,188,360. We are showing an additional increase in our special education revenue of about $640,000. We're planning to transport Aspen students, so if we have 300 students that we transport through Aspen with, it's 4.66% of our basic formula, which is about $300, so you're seeing $90,000 there for some additional revenue. We are seeing a decrease in our title funding, which we have discussed in the past, so that's about $57,000. We know we're going to see an increase in our interest revenue of about $30,000, and here I'm showing this increase in activities revenue of about $27,000. So that's a total revenue projection of $3,918,210. Staffing needs, we've gone over this several times. You've either have approved the majority of these, which I believe by this time we have approved all of them as part of this budget process. And the additional expenditures that we're planning on because of opening the new spaces is about $220,000 of additional utilities and custodial budgets, another $125,000 in additional buses for transportation. We have allotted $600,000 of one-time costs out of the capital budget for construction allocation, and this is part of the referendum. And $22,500 for increased expenditures for activities for 1 year. And you can see where that offset is if we decide to do that in the future. Otherwise, that will come out of the general fund if the board decides not to do that. One of the things that I don't believe that is on there, because we don't know what that is any increased costs in salary and benefits for our activities for the future. So it's something that we'll be discussing as well, because as those amounts increase, that will have an increase in future years as well. So this is what our general fund looks like. As you can see, it's tough to see this, and I know because it's a lot of information. I do want to point out a couple things. I'm still showing an assigned for construction of $1.5 million, but at this time, we do not intend to utilize those dollars. I've left it out here because that's at the board's request, but as we continue to work through this bid process with the finalizing all of the bids for Hamilton Ridge Elementary, I believe with the work that we've done with long-term facility maintenance dollars and really looking at rebidding and those kinds of things throughout this, these last couple of months and actual year, that we will come in under budget in all of the areas without having to use this $1.5 million. So that's a good thing. And the other thing is line number 1 under the restricted, you now see a restricted for student activities, and the amount is about $200,000. And as we will do a restatement on our audit and show these dollars amounts for our, as you come into the next audit season, which is coming right up here, when the audit is presented in October, you'll see this restatement on our audit as well. So you can see our budget overall, just under the assigned, the total for the assigned, the top portion, the A portion. You can see our estimated fund balance is going from $12,820 million to $11,526 million. So we are decreasing that, but we're still above our fund balance projection at this point of about 12.3%. And that's what we utilize when we consider our fund balance. It's just that top portion. The other restricted portion we do not consider because that is money that is specific for those areas and can't be used for all areas of the general fund budget. So overall, our district is in really good shape currently financially. So I would like to the board to approve the general fund budget, as well as I'm showing all of our other funds. I have adjusted one more time our food service budget. We've really had a tough time. As you know, this next year will be difficult for our food service department, or our child nutrition services department, because our high school will be without a true cafeteria for the majority of this school year. So we're really trying to find out how can we continue to serve students, in which we will do, but we'll be utilizing all spaces of the high school commons area to provide lunch for our students at the high school this year, just with throughout the construction process. That will possibly have an effect on our revenue budget. And so that's why this has been a changing as we really dig into those numbers. Our community ed budget, you can see we're really working hard to increase that fund balance as well. Our building construction fund, we're showing what our estimated revenue is, which would be interest revenue there. And showing the majority of that being spent down, we'll see where we are at the end of July or June of next year. We may not quite have spent that all down, but we're planning on it. And then our debt service, our custodial fund, I have added that as well. That would be a new Fund 18 for fundraisers. That will be whatever we receive we plan will be spent in 1 year. So we're hoping that's part of this legislation with the student activity funds as well. So like pennies for patients and those kinds of things will run through this custodial fund instead of running through their student activity fund. And then the internal service fund, as you know, is our self-insured health and dental. And then our OPEB trust. The interest revenue there is, revenue is the $145,000. Any questions on the budget?
Does anyone have any questions? I want a clarification. In our board packet, it says preliminary budget approval. Is this final budget approval?
It's the final night. This will be our preliminary budget approval.
Okay.
And then we'll have a revised budget in December as usual. This is our
So
final.
It's the final approval of the preliminary budget.
Right. Or it's just the approval of the preliminary budget.
Okay, because it says final budget on your documents. It's kind of getting mixed up here. Does anyone have any questions for Julie?
Make a motion?
Oh, yeah, I'll take a motion
A
to
motion to-
approve the
Yep.
final preliminary
Is
budget.
that what we're calling it? Final preliminary budget. I make a
By
motion.
Stacy, second.
Second.
Jonathan, any questions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0. Thank you. And the last item on our new business is the annual lead and water management plan approval. Jim?
Good evening. This is actually more of a summary of the plan you've already approved. This is to go over the sample results and where we are currently with our lead and water. So as you know, a couple years ago, Minnesota State Statute 121A.335 outlines that we needed a management plan for lead and water. This district, we're very fortunate. The source water we get from Prior Lake and Savage is excellent, no lead in that water. And so we sampled all of fixture, potable water fixture in our district. Our plan says we have to do that every 5 years, so we did that. Marine did that in May of 18. Our next testing round will be in 21. The action level for lead is anything greater than 20 parts per billion lead in the water. There are action steps if we find any fixture with elevated levels of lead. We found 25. We had at 6 sites. High School had 2, Twin Oaks had 5, Hidden Oaks had 14, Westwood had 2, Five Oaks had 1, and Greenwood had 1. It's really important to note that all were classroom sinks. Not one elevated level was in a drinking fountain. Levels went from 21.3 parts per billion to 374 parts per billion. After the first round of testing, we ended up with 25, as I've said. The protocol for retesting is to exactly that, retest again. We did come back with a 9 taps that were elevated at Hidden Oaks and Twin Oaks. They were resampled in October of 29. After that, Twin Oaks was cleared, and Hidden Oaks had a couple more. I think there was a problem with our testing protocol. It's kind of a tricky deal. We have to take water first draw in the morning, and then depending on where that is, we can't have anybody draw ahead. The other challenge is we have to flush the night before. So it's a little bit of a tricky deal. So we retested Hidden Oaks again. Final report came in May 9th, and Hidden Oaks was cleared. So at this point, all our all of our potable water sources are under 20 parts per billion of lead. That's good news. You have the report in your board packet. Are there any questions specifically I can answer?
Are there any questions for Jim? A lot of documentation.
It is, it's a lot of science stuff, and I'm not a scientist, but I am comfortable with the water we're providing, and again, the municipalities that we draw our water from are really good.
No questions? Okay, this does not require board action, so
It's a
thank you very
report.
much for the review.
Thank you.
Okay, there is no policy in front of us tonight. Move on to administrative reports. Dr. Stalo.
Excellent. Thank you very much. At Prior Lake Savage Area Schools, our mission is to educate all learners to reach their full potential as contributing and productive members of our ever-changing global community. Our collective work is focused on this mission, and tonight I just want to update you on a couple of things that y'all probably already know about. But last week we did bid farewell to our students, and we also ended the year really strong last Friday with our annual staff end of the year celebration and awards ceremony. Our theme, We Are PLSAS, Ideas Matter, was used throughout the morning. We opened the ceremony the same way that we began in the fall with the voices of students and reminding ourselves of the importance of listening to those. We had a great time celebrating just some unbelievable staff. And looking at that list of nominees, you know, I know how humble our staff members are, and you know, they're shying into and saying, I'm no more deserving than anyone else, but just really, really fantastic. And then to end that morning with 150 elementary students was really touching. So thank you for those of you who were able to come. I am so proud of our district staff. I'm so proud of the work that they do every single day. To not worry about what their role is, but to make sure that they're impacting the lives of our kids and ensuring that that mission comes to life. So then, right, that evening, Michael, you're right, the bookend of that day and the emotion is pretty intense. We celebrated 691 graduates at Dan Patch Stadium during our commencement. The weather was gorgeous. The night was beautiful. Thank you, board members, for being there. I had a couple staff members that said, you know, please promise us we'll always be in the stadium. And that was a promise I said, is that we will. And, you know, we're just going to keep knocking on wood that we can have the night that we had, because I know our plan B isn't great. I also know how special it is for the students to be, and for the families in our entire community to be able to be a part of it in the stadium. So really special. And our future looks really bright, even as we say goodbye to an amazing class who had some fantastic accomplishments. Our future looks bright. Congratulations to Prior Lake High School students Izzy Lindquist and Ella Nelson, daughter of Michael Nelson, our school board member, who earned the highest possible ACT composite score of 36. According to ACT, only around 0.2% of students who take the ACT exam earn that top score. And in the United States high school graduating class of 2018, only 3,741 out of more than 1.9 million graduates who took the ACT earned that top score. So lots to celebrate, and we're excited for the juniors to step into that leadership role, and that begins this summer. Student council, I'm sure, is already meeting. Captains of teams have already met, so the students will step into that role really well.
Okay, are there any administrative reports? Board reports? Who wants to start?
Well, I don't have much. I mean, other than Friday was a great day. I think we attended in the morning, which I think I've been to every one, I think, pretty much since I've been on the board, of starting the year and ending the year with the staff. So it was it's pretty fun to see, you know, different teachers and staff being awarded who have put in so many hours and been just dedicated to the district and help us, you know, make us who we are today. So it was pretty fun, that. And then obviously graduation was big fun. So that's about it for me.
I'll add a few. I know we were all invited to the Wonder Projects presentations in 6th grade with Claire Jonas, I think is how you say your name. And I attended several of those sessions. I know Dr. Stallo was there. And talk about student-directed learning. It was so powerful. The students were able to go through this incredible process of narrowing down what they wonder about. And then they were taught all of these real-life skills, from teamwork to learning how to best document your research, to learning creative presentation skills, to public speaking skills, all the way down to welcoming the adults who were visiting in the office and being required to make conversation with us as we walked through the hallways, were seated, and offered refreshments. Not only that, the teacher stayed in the back of the room the entire time. And if the kids fumbled, they had to problem solve while they were up there with their projector or anything else. Twice I spoke to the kids. One time I said, you know, I'm on the board and we help make decisions about what happens in your classroom. What do you want the board to know? And they were full of ideas. I won't share them all, but basically they really loved being able to pursue learning with something that mattered to them. They loved learning how to use the presentation skills, all kinds of things that were just amazing. And what I said to the last group was, there's so much pressure put on kids for grades, for test scores, and I know that we need that for accountability, those test scores, and look at those grades. But those students, I told them, you showed me things about you no test score would ever show. You showed me that you are a creative thinker, that you're a problem solver, that you can present publicly, that you can design materials and present a message. And I congratulate everybody involved in that project. I also had the opportunity to participate in eSTEM Day, and I went to La Ola del Lago to do that. And what was amazing was not only using our environment for this learning opportunity, the kids were digging in the ponds and pulling out everything from snails to mayfly nymphs and whatever. But then they did it in the context of their Spanish language and writing. So they did these writing activities that reinforced what they're doing in the classroom with the tool of being out in nature. And to me, that's a really great application of eSTEM. It's a tool that we use to reinforce what's going on in the classroom. I was thrilled to be a part of that. I wish I spoke more Spanish, though. I was able to attend several middle school and high school band concerts and the band banquet, and it just reminded me as a board member how important it is for us to have a variety of activities for our students to find a place that feels like home where they fit. Just the band program alone, there's several kids who I don't think find a niche anywhere else, but there they find an adult they trust or friends they trust, and that goes a long way. And I know it's true of other activities as well. And then finally, just to reiterate what Stacy said, the power of that end of year breakfast and sitting among those educators and feeling that energy, hearing about their accomplishments and what they do. And then at graduation to see kids go through, and even the teachers who are reading names, some of the kids would stop up and hug them or high five them as they came for their diploma. I mean, that connection is so powerful, and I want to see what we can do as a board to continue to nurture that. We're here for these kids, and we're here for these teachers, and there's great stuff happening. So thank you for those opportunities.
I just wanted to point out that the Tech Ed display went on this week at the same time. I was late getting to the MnCAP's health pathways, which was also incredibly impressive with all the students, and I ran into Dr. Stallo there, so that was really cool in front of two of my mentees. Yeah. So went to the appreciation happy hour pretty much at Charlie's for all of the people that volunteer for the school district as well as the mentors. That was. And by the way, it was a great idea to have it at Charlie's, not just because it was happy hour at the end of the day, but because it was such a social environment that it allowed a lot of the parents and business leaders, et cetera, in Prior Lake to network. And the presentation given by Eric Sill was fantastic. And then, of course, I was a judge and also a coach, so I had to recuse myself for the earlier portion of the of Shark Tank. So we went through that and did the final for Shark Tank, and that was a lot of fun. And my feedback to the students was they actually presented better than most seasoned adults in the industry do. It was that good. So hopefully they continue on with that. That was very impressive.
Jonathan?
I just want to let Mary go so I didn't have to follow Michael. So thank you. You were chock full. Breakfast last week was just really fun, really enjoyable. Next year, assuming that I am able to attend, I absolutely will again, and I'm going to follow through on not sitting isolated as board people. I'm just going to go find a spot up among all the teachers. I think that would be fun. And it's great experience, first time being able to be a part of graduation. That's really meaningful. I attended I can't remember what it was called, Mary, you just mentioned it, but the morning before MnCAPs at the Fab Lab and showing off their wares and the stuff that the kids had made. The process that many of them had engaged with our special ed folks about things that they need at the beginning of the year, and looked at the available products and things they're using and found a way to make improvements and just create. And what was fun for me was asking a lot of those students to tell me about other things that they'd done other than the ones that I was looking at, and asking many of them, and I asked, if you are going to be in the building how much of your time would you like to have be here? And they'd all start laughing, and they'd just get a big smile on their face, and so this is every class I can take, every time I can be here, I'm here. And really remarkable stuff that had been made. The young man who made the coffee table / end table that had the lake cut out of the wood. It was, he could sell, he could go one lake at a time through Minnesota and sell as many of those as he could make for as much as he wanted to charge, because everybody would want one. Yeah.
Well, I'll just echo what everyone else has said. I love the breakfast. It's full of energy, but it's a different kind of energy than the one at the beginning of the year. They're both equally exciting. And graduation, of course, is always my favorite night. It makes a lot of things worthwhile. And I was at the Fab Lab as well, and just amazed at what these kids can do. And MinCaps was really fun as well. I mean, just their project, but then the presentation of what they had to say was very good. So it was a good week for that. Oh my goodness! And
We all
yes,
forgot,
Mary,
yes.
Mary and I were at Bridges for the senior recognition, and that was fabulous. It's very rewarding to see kids that otherwise might not make it through the regular avenues in the high school come back. Especially, this is a couple years in a row now where someone's come back and they're having a lot of success in their education and their careers. So very rewarding to see, and a lot of excitement there too, and pride. So, yeah. Okay. Let's see, moving on to future events. On June 20th is the Hamilton Ridge groundbreaking at 1 o'clock, the board construction tour, and then the board retreat. And I think emails were sent out to everyone to respond, so if you haven't, please do so. And then on June 24th is our board study session with potentially a meeting to open up afterward. And with no other business at this time, we don't need to take a motion, but we will be closing the meeting to discuss the superintendent evaluation and negotiation strategies. So, I guess not.
Yeah, we need a motion.
The meeting will be closed. Yes, okay, I need a motion to close.
Adjourn the open meeting? And, okay.
You didn't put that on here, but you're here, so is that
Yeah.
why?
Yeah, we make a motion to adjourn the open meeting and close.
Right,
And
and you
do a
just,
closed session.
and you won't be here when we're closing it? You put this on here, I'm confused right now. Right, okay. So I'll take a motion to close the meeting.
Yes, made.
By Stacy,
Yeah.
Second.
by Enrique. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0. We are closed.